On today's episode of Evolving Politics, I talk with Nash County GOP Chairman Mark Edwards about the 2024 election, the Nash County GOP Convention, and other local news. Welcome.
Good to see you.
Could you tell me a little about the Nash GOP Convention coming up?
Sure. Got the Nash County Republican Party county convention coming up in March. All county parties in North Carolina and the GOP have to have their county convention in March. So ours will be on Thursday, March 20th, Nash Community College, where we've traditionally had it for the last several years. The event starts at 6 o'clock. Doors will open at 5 for people to come in and register. We are excited to announce that we will have North Carolina Auditor Dave Bullock as our speaker. But it also is our county convention where we will conduct some business. So I can get into that too as well.
What kind of business?
Sure. Well, the county parties and the state party operates on a 2-year cycle. So in odd number years, which this is one, we elect all of our leadership and start a new year for the county party. So in the business portion of this county convention, we will elect new officers and at-large members of the executive committee. Then, as always, we will adopt a plan of organization, which is our bylaws, and then we will elect delegates to the district and state convention. So for Nash County Republicans to participate in our district party or at the state party convention in June, they must be elected as a delegate from the county, and that happens at the county convention.
And you're obviously running for chairman again?
Yeah, I think I will be up again for county chair, yes.
What would that be, your 10th term?
Yeah, I think that's right.
So
we're getting into there.
When did you start doing that?
Well, I was working on the McCain campaign and became a member of the executive committee in 2008, and then became secretary and quickly was the vice chair. And then Kevin Lewis, who was the chair, moved up to become the chair of the Board of Elections at that point in time, and that's when I became chairman.
Okay. What made you want to get involved in local politics?
Well, like I said, I just have always been interested in politics. Had come back from college and law school, and had been involved in the community and several other nonprofits, but wanted to do my part on the ground level for politics in Nash County. So just contacted somebody who was on the executive committee saying, what can I do? They said, come to a county executive committee meeting, and I was willing to serve, and the next thing you knew, I was on the executive committee and working at that level. So and then it's just I enjoy doing that because a lot of it is just mechanical paperwork. It's not necessarily the hardcore politics that you see on TV. I enjoy it because I just kind of work in the background and help things move along, and then let our candidates and elected officials be on the front line handling the hard questions and things like that.
So you're more a behind-the-scenes guy.
That's correct.
Okay, and going back to the convention, we're going to have the auditor come and speak. And interestingly, he was endorsed by the former auditor, Beth Wood.
That's right.
Who was a Democrat.
That's right.
Which I found that interesting that she endorsed him, and he's doing a pretty good job so far. I saw that he ended the DEI programs pretty much right when he got in.
Yeah.
Tell me anything about him.
He's an attorney, not necessarily, not necessarily a businessman, but he has taken a very businessman's approach to running the auditor's office. He has hit the ground running. I think we will find he will do a good job of working with everybody across the board. I think he knows he ran a hard campaign as a Republican, but had the endorsement of a Democrat, as you say. And I think he understands that, once he's elected and he's representing everybody in North Carolina, he will be coming at it from a conservative perspective, but he will be trying to represent everybody in North Carolina. It'll be an interesting dynamic because now he is in charge of the elections process. As a county chair, I have already been contacted by the auditor's office regarding our county party role in the local board of election. I think he will handle that office with a high level of professionalism. Of course, there'll always be some partisan bickering over the Board of Elections, but I think we will see a very efficiently run Board of Elections. and that can work for everybody. And I think that'll carry through his whole department as far as auditing. He's already working on the DMV as we speak. And that's an issue, once again, that I think cuts across partisan lines. Everybody wants an efficient DMV. Everybody feels that maybe that department can be run a little bit more efficiently. And so I think he's an up-and-coming leader in the Republican movement in North Carolina. And I'm grateful that we will have him speaking to our Nash County Republicans at our convention.
Now, is that new that they have the auditor be in charge of the Board of Elections?
That's correct, because the Board of Elections has been its own entity and reports to itself, and now the Board of Elections reports to the auditor. And so that will be a new process that we all are going through. Correct.
When did that change?
Just shortly in the latter part of 2024. So this is brand new.
Okay. How does the Nash County GOP serve how does Nash County serve as the place that'll possibly determine presidential elections?
Sure. Well, Nash County has had a pretty stable population over the last few decades. So without a lot of increase or decrease in our population, then our vote in every election, from election to election, stays pretty much the same. And here it is very, very close. And the presidential election has been the bellwether for the country to see how our presidential elections are going, because when a president does well in Nash County, that usually pushes them up 1 or 2%, and that 1 or 2% in Nash County gets them across the line. And so therefore, this county has oscillated between Democrat and Republican, Obama, Romney, Trump, Obama, Trump, Biden, and Trump. Back to Trump.
And I think this year, or the last election, it went more resounding towards Trump.
That's
correct. It hasn't passed, because in the past it's been around 100 somewhere votes.
Sure,
this
very,
year,
very close. Yeah.
It was close to 1,000 that
Correct.
won this county by this time, which I think we saw that all over the country, where he had a more demanding win than in the past.
Yeah. But North Carolina, but Nash County really is an indicator of that. And we were always motivated, of course, to get out during our presidential elections and support our presidential candidate. But with Nash County's history, it kind of gives us a little extra push to get those last few 100 or 1,000 votes over the line, so that we can put North Carolina in our candidates column.
Could you describe how the Nash GOP is moved forward into the new age of politics?
Sure. Well, Nash County in eastern North Carolina has followed the pattern of most of eastern North Carolina, where back in the 50s and 60s, a lot of conservative Democrats in the area. And as we moved through the 80s and 90s, those conservative Democrats became Republican. And then as we move from the 90s to the aughts to the 10s and 20s, you see the Republican Party becoming more and more at least an equal player on the playing field. And then, and given what we just talked about, Nash County being on the edge, it really takes a hard effort on the Nash County Republican side to push our candidates across that 50% mark. And we've done a good job of that, with a sheriff, district attorney, majority on the county commissioners, and so forth. That really shows how we have got, and a state senator, state house member, Republican. That really shows how the party has come together. And it wasn't that long ago that the Nash County, and as in all eastern North Carolina, the Nash County Republican Party was a pretty small entity with a pretty small number of volunteers. And each Republican candidate that came along had to gather up their own volunteers to try to run a campaign. Now we're in a position where we have our own group of volunteers that can help our candidates.
It was interesting. You're talking about the change politically from decade to decade.
Yes.
I would say now I'm almost noticing a change that Republicans are starting to take over the populist movement, because in the past, a lot of those votes, like up in the Rust Belt, those went to Democrats. But now I feel like it's more Republicans are taking the populist vote, and Democrats are more going towards the bigger business side. I mean, are you seeing that in Rocky Mountain?
That's for sure. I mean, that the type of volunteer, the type of Republican voter that's changed in the nation is changing here in the county, and that is, where you would go to find volunteers, where you would go to recruit people to help the party has changed because the Republican coalition has changed, and so we've had to adjust with that. And then, of course, with social media coming along, that really changes the nature of how parties on both sides of the aisle operate campaigns for candidates and volunteer efforts on behalf of the party. So now we have the benefit of social media, and that helps, I think, with the movement you're talking about, that right. That we're able to reach basically anybody in the county if we make an effort behind it. And social media helps with that.
I mean, most people have a phone, so social media is
right.
a big thing nowadays. Could you describe what your top priorities are for the Nash County Republican Party? Yeah,
well, it's of course it always has been, will be, into the future to support our candidates. So that part doesn't change. That we key off of whatever our candidates need. But of course, and then I think what that is volunteers. And so we are expanding our efforts to reach out across the county to get volunteers. What we find is, of course, in presidential years, we do a very good job of recruiting and finding those people who come out of the woodwork to be interested, who are interested in participating in the presidential campaign and volunteering. Some of those folks don't necessarily come out in an odd year, as we'll have in 2026, where we got an off year where we got congressional races and a Senate race. And so it'll be a little bit more difficult to just get folks who will come out on their own. We will need to pick up the phone and call them, text them, email them to get them. And so we have done a good job of collecting the names of the volunteers who volunteered most recently. And my goal is, in this 2025, getting ready for 2026, to keep those folks engaged so that when it rolls around to 2026, we're not starting from scratch. We have a cadre of volunteers, mm-hmm. and then we always will try to add on in 2026, but to keep those folks engaged.
In 2024, did you see more volunteers than in past years helping out with the elections?
Yes, because I think, yes, I would say the pattern we've had is 2016 with Trump as the candidate. You had a lot of support for Trump out there, but a lot of that support came from folks who had not volunteered before, and they weren't really aware of how to volunteer, the need to volunteer. So we actually struggled in 2016 to get folks to volunteer, because even though there was this excitement about Trump, those folks weren't walking in the door wanting to volunteer. Right. We saw a little bit more of that in 2020, and then what we saw was that the RNC did a very good job of getting the data, giving us names, giving us folks, and giving us the tools and resources so that when 2024 rolled around, we could reach out to those folks. And so, and then when they did walk in the door, we had stuff ready to go to get them engaged, trained, and deployed out to volunteer. And so, yes, I saw in 2024, I think that movement of folks that were relatively new to the party were engaged in the campaign, and that really helped us a lot.
Yeah, I think he did bring a whole new coalition, like we were talking about, into the party. Also, I feel like in 2016, people were more, I guess you could say, scared to show their support for Trump out in public, because it seemed like such a backwards thing that if you support Trump, and all over the media, everyone said he was going to lose. And I feel like that might have played a part in people not wanting to get as involved. They were scared to show their support. And I feel like in this past election, people were not as laid back about it. They were more willing to show support, especially after he got shot. People were a lot more enthusiastic. Like, this is who I want to be my president. I'm going to show support. And I remember Elon Musk saying the best way to get more people to get involved would be to just show your support. Wear a Trump shirt, wear a MAGA hat. More people, if they see you showing your support, they're going to want to show their support, volunteer, and help out in the same ways.
I agree with that, and we were there. Even when it comes to T-shirts or hats or little things like that, it seems like a very small thing. Signs, things like that. In 2016, we were struggling to get all that stuff. It was all in flux, and so on the party end, the RNC wasn't quite as organized or quite as helpful to us as a county party to get all of that stuff done. So that even when you did have some of that excitement out there, we couldn't quite capture it. Whereas now, after 2020 and 2024, we're able there to capture that energy and to make good use of it.
Right, and I'll bring it up Elon Musk that I was just talking about. Obviously, Doge, that's the new big thing. Have you seen anything with the USAID that's going on?
Oh, sure, yeah.
I mean, there's some interesting, let me just read off some of the stuff that's going on there. Doge found that U.S. was spending $50 million on condoms in Gaza. They were spending $1.5 million for a DEI musical in Ireland. They were spending $20 million for a Sesame Street show in Iraq and $5.5 million to promote gay and trans advocacy in Jamaica and Uganda. So, I mean, they're finding a bunch, and these are like 20, 21-year-old people who are just really good with computers going in and finding all this junk. I mean, imagine how easy this would be for a foreign nation to just go in and see that we're spending all this money on useless things.
Oh yeah, and of course, as a lifelong conservative, we know that there's a lot of. I mean, I know that there's a lot of waste and abuse in the government.
Oh yeah.
And the bigger government grows, the more things like that happen. And so it'll be interesting to see how all of this stuff plays out. And whether we get rid of that in one day or it takes us 6 months or a year to get rid of that, I think that the effort that Trump has started will pay dividends to the American people. And we just have to make sure that this isn't a flash in the pan, that this isn't something that's just happening here in the very beginning of his first 100 days of the term, and then we get bogged down into other things. I think we need to just keep pushing forward, keep trimming back some of this wasteful spending, and just push at that. And I think that's going to be the challenge. Right now, it's a little bit of the fun part that I think the Democrats are on their heels. They're way back on their heels right now. The Democrats will not be on their heels for the whole 4 years.
You don't think so?
No. I think the Democrats are struggling. Whenever you lose a presidential race, you're going to struggle for a little while. The congressional races will be coming up in 2026. I do think at the moment, I don't think the Democrats are on the right path to winning. But I also think, just history shows parties respond to the public eventually. Mm-hmm. And so I think the Democrats long term will respond and where they had some deficiencies in the last election, they will correct some of those deficiencies. And we just have to keep pushing. And so that's, I'm glad that they found this wasteful spending. I'm glad they're trying to cut it off. I am sure they're cutting off things at the moment that are probably needed, and they need to correct those things and then keep pushing to finding the waste and the abuse. And then we just need to support a Congress that's going to be not just talking heads, but get in there and when they do the budget, to actually cut these things out of the budget so that we're not having to do a rear guard action of finding these things after they've been appropriated and the money's going out the door. We need to start working on fixing on the front end of having Congress pass a budget that reduces these things like that.
Well, if you go back to the 2019 spending level, it was $2.5 trillion less than what we're spending right now. And if we went back to that level of spending, then we would have a balanced budget.
Yes.
That's all they need to do.
Yes.
Which, I don't know, each year it seems that we just keep adding more and more spending. But, that was just 2019.
Yes.
I feel like if they just work together, they can easily get there.
Yes.
And
we have a very small majority in Congress.
That is true.
And so it's going to take a huge effort on the leaders in the Senate, the leaders in the House, to keep them all together.
And, it should be able to get done because, if you look at 2018, 2019, the Democrats were in charge of Congress.
Right.
And then Trump still got it to work out and get through. So I feel like if he can get that to happen, hopefully with his leadership, they can get a Republican-controlled Congress to get a balanced budget through.
Yes.
And also, going back to the DNC and how you say they sway to the public opinion, they completely changed leadership this past time around, which I don't know if it was for the best. They had their new vice chair, David Hogg.
Yeah, your hero.
Oh, yeah, my hero for sure. He's young, not young as me, but he's a little interesting. He doesn't obviously know how the Second Amendment works or the Supreme Court cases, because he was, in one of his old tweets, he was talking about how they just need to get rid of, the only way you can use a gun is for militia rights and stuff, which is back to what the Constitution sort of says, but it's not entirely what it says, because if you go back to Supreme Court cases from the early, 2008, Supreme Court case says you can use a gun for self-defense. It's not specifically defined to just militia, because who has a militia nowadays?
Yeah. And I think you'll find that if they want to go down the road of having David Hogg be a leader of the Democrat Party, as a Republican, that's fine with me, because the longer he represents where the Democrat Party is headed, Republicans will do well.
Oh, we're going to do very well.
Yeah, but I don't think that will be representative. I think when you look at the end of the Trump term, you will see that the Democrats have come around on some issues back to the center, which is, I personally think is a good thing, because it'll force Republicans to find policies that follow the conservative philosophy of implementing a small government, limited government, strong government, but limited. But I think at the moment, and this may last 6 months or a year, but when they have to run congressional candidates in 2026, those candidates on the front line are the ones who have to figure out where the policies, where the American people want to go, and finding policies that meet the American people. And I think that's when you'll see Democrats understanding. I mean, I don't think, Trump has chopped off a lot of DEI stuff right now. Once again, I'll repeat, I think they need to kind of go in, and Congress needs to go in and implement policies to make that more permanent. But the Democrats are free in 2026 to campaign on bringing that stuff back. And I think you'll find they're not going to campaign to bring that stuff back. And while it may not come out of their mouths that they realize that was a mistake, I think the fact that they're not going to campaign on it will tell you a whole lot.
Oh, yeah, they're definitely not going to be campaigning on let's spend $50 million on condoms in Gaza.
Correct. And I think David Hogg will be off campaigning off in Minnesota and Alaska. I don't think Montana and Alaska. I don't think you'll see him on the front line in 2026. But they're going to have to go through a crazy period, apparently, to get there. It's
funny to me because they keep portraying him as the masculine role. Because, I mean, obviously, the Democrats are losing the male vote every single year that goes down because, I mean, they keep just swaying away from it. And they kind of presented him as this masculine figure. He's going to bring back masculinity to the DNC. I don't see it. He's very.
Well, that's why we brought you on board.
Oh, me?
We don't have that problem in Nash County.
Just for the Nash County Republican Party. And then, have you been watching these confirmation hearings?
I've watched some, sure, yeah.
Which ones have you been watching?
I watched some of Bondi's, some of Kash Patel, some of Kennedy's, correct, yeah.
And Bondi finally got confirmed.
Correct,
and
she's confirmed.
RFK, that might be coming up Monday,
yes,
if I'm not mistaken.
Which Patel, they're delaying the Patel at the moment.
They're delaying that.
By the time this comes out, hopefully all the stuff will be over.
Right, and then I know Tom Tillis is a big fan of Kash Patel, as I've been seeing. And then he created that bingo chart. Have you seen that?
Yeah, correct.
The Kash bingo chart. That one was pretty funny.
Yeah, correct.
And so I was just thinking, if we look at RFK Jr.'s confirmation hearing, it was funny to me. There was this moment where Bernie Sanders, where he was talking, and Bernie was like, "You're not going to go and sway to the big pharmaceutical companies." And then RFK Jr. was like, "No, you're the one getting paid by all the big pharmaceutical companies." And then
right.
he lost it, man, because Bernie tries to play out like he's some. I don't know, maybe a savior for like the little guy, but he's really not.
Right.
He's getting paid off by all the big people. He's just portraying that he's not.
Right.
And I feel like RFK Jr. is the change you need in health and human services.
We'll see. Yeah, I mean, he is certainly an out-of-the-box choice, as Trump has done for several of these departments, and the proof will be in the pudding. I mean, so he'll be confirmed, and he'll get in there. If he performs, that's great. If he doesn't perform to Trump standards, he won't be there that long. Right. So we'll see. And but to me, those confirmation hearings are just further evidence that the Democrats are a little bit on their heels. They weren't very effective. Some of that stuff was good political theater, but I don't think it moved the ball in their direction. And as we're finding out, they're all getting confirmed. So
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, John Thune's done a pretty good job of getting the Senate together, or the Republicans together, to get through all these nominations. If you go back to Trump's first term, I mean, I think at this current time they maybe had 6 cabinet members confirmed. They got maybe 13 confirmed now. They're moving a lot quicker.
Right. And it's a pretty diverse coalition of senators in the Senate. They don't all agree. They don't come from the same place. But it takes a strong leader at the top in the Senate to bring them together, to vote. And when you're dealing with that, whether it's on the county commission, school board, Congress, House, or Senate, your real strength comes from a unified, or at least unified enough to get something passed, coalition working together. Sometimes we have members, especially in the House, who sometimes don't understand that.
Oh yeah, they like
and
that.
Right, and so your real strength is working together.
You get more done that way. And also, you were talking about how he's an out-of-the-box. I mean, I feel like we need an out-of-the-box person to be in charge of that because the health in our country is terrible.
Correct.
I mean, it's continuing to decline. Like, he's the only person I'm seeing at a big national level who's talked about possibly banning, like, high fructose corn syrup and sodas, instead replacing it with like cane sugar. I mean, with high fructose corn syrup, our bodies can't digest the sucrose in it, and it just turns into fat in our bodies. And that's why we have such a big obesity problem in the United States. I mean, they need to change that. And then red dye 40, that also, I mean, that probably needs to get banned because that has so many links to cancer, mental disorders, and nobody's really talking about it. The FDA doesn't talk about it because, I mean, they're probably all the people on those commissions, most of the time, they come from food companies who are putting all this crap into what we're eating. So it doesn't really make sense why that would work that way, but that's what they're doing.
Well, that's just the complaint against the administrative state, since that started back in the 40s, 50s, 60s, that we're living with today, that the administrative state needs to be pared back. It gets captured all the time by whatever industry that area of the administrative state is regulating. They eventually get captured by that industry. That's just the nature of the administrative state, which needs to be pared back. And once again, so we're seeing this flurry of activity in the Trump term here that hopefully bodes well for what will happen. But it's going to take a sustained effort that bleeds down into Congress passing laws that helps pare back the administrative state. And to the extent RFK Jr. can play into that, that'll be great. I just think the danger of all these departments, him as well, is just these are, as much of the stuff that you mentioned is going on, they also administer a lot of programs that people rely on. And so he has to be careful that the one day that he messes up getting folks Medicare benefits or Social Security benefits to them, he will have to reap the whirlwind on that. So, I don't think he would ever intentionally do anything to do that. But I think the Democrats will be ready to pounce on anything, and he doesn't need to give them any fodder unintentionally. So I just think that having these out-of-the-box folks that Trump's bringing in, hopefully they can keep pushing for the things that you're talking about, but also administer those departments in a way that doesn't undermine the good stuff they're doing. And
I read that you were talking about Social Security. The next step for DOJ, they're thinking of going right into the Social Security Administration because in the past, they had about $2 billion last year. We don't know where it went in the Social Security Administration. And they're always talking about how we don't have money in there. Well, where's all this free money going? The $2 billion, that's a large sum. So I'm excited to see what DOJ is going to find in there. Well, maybe not excited because I'm sure it's not going to be anything good.
Yeah,
but
correct.
And I'm glad they're going to be
the Democrats, when you start talking about Social Security, you're really messing with folks who may not watch the news every day, who may not pay attention to everything that's going on, but they do know that they rely on their Social Security benefits coming in every month. And so you just have to make sure, be ready, because the Democrats are going to pounce if you mess up anything on that. But I agree with you that what they need to focus on is being transparent about what's going on and highlighting the waste and abuse and the fraud, and hopefully they'll do that.
Right, and thinking, I mean, this has been going on for forever, and pretty much every agency. If you go back to like the Cold War times, 50s, 60s, I mean, you had like the CIA doing Project MK Ultra. Do you know of that?
Some of it, yes.
Some of it, I mean, that's an interesting topic. You get into mind control, trying to use drugs to get people to think certain ways, and then I think it was like 1973, the CIA director Richard Helms, he told them to destruct all evidence of it, but then obviously it came up in a congressional hearing.
In the church hearings, that's right.
I mean, and this is going on for years.
Yeah, and
wasting
luckily,
money.
After the church hearings, they were able to clean up a lot of that. Correct.
Right.
But what you're just seeing is that the bureaucracy always creeps back, and so you just always have to be you have to have a strong federal government that keeps that stuff back. Yeah, that cuts it back.
And they're also, hopefully they can get to the Department of Education. And obviously there's a lot of talk about possibly finding ways to end it or get it back to the states, which I think would be beneficial, getting it back to the states, because there's a lot of corruption going on there. But I almost feel like in a way there's kind of like a war on education currently when we look at all the DEI stuff going on in schools, which is we're starting to see it come back to common sense reality, whereas we had people putting cat litter boxes in schools for kids who thought they were cats, which is just insane. But and also just the things that are getting taught in these schools in other places. I don't think this is going on in Nash County, but in more liberal-leaning places, they have like more doctrine that's being taught to people than actually educating on things. And like I think back to what Karl Marx always thought. He thought if communism was going to enter the United States, it wouldn't be through force. It would have to come in through the younger generation, through children. So I really think we need to get more people involved on education and school boards. Like if there's a school board seat open and it's run by a Democrat is in that current seat, run for it. Run for it. Especially, I mean, in Nash County, I think anybody, if they think they want to do something and they're in a district where a Democrat is running that seat, run for it.
Yeah. And we were proud to support some of the Republicans that were running. All the seats were up for election in Nash County this time on the school board, which was just an interesting little quirk because of ending the county line or implementing the county line. And I agree with that because education in Washington is never going to work, whether you got a Republican in the White House or a Democrat in the White House, because you're just the bureaucracy coming from Washington is always going to get captured by those that are involved in education. And I'm not interested in implementing a conservative style of education coming from Washington or a liberal style. I think that with North Carolina native Linda McMahon at the head of the Department of Education and Trump in the White House, they're on the right path to just reduce what is in the Department of Education and what's going on. Let it happen at the state level. And at the state level, hopefully our state House and Senate members will help push it down to the local level, because I do think, whatever is coming out of these schools of education, supporting woke policies, DEI, if that tries to creep itself into the classroom, the best defense of that is parents and keeping parents informed about what's going on. And the parents talking to the school board is the best solution. And so it's not going to come from Washington, it's going to come from the parents. And so I agree with you. Having school board members who are there, who are receptive, who are wanting the best, and I truly believe all of our school board members, Democrat, Republican, want the best for what's best. But we need
to have different views of it.
Correct, and we need to. I think in having conservative, Republican members of the school board make them more open to listening to parents when it comes to the formulation of our curriculum and what should be happening in our schools.
Right, and if you go back and look at the test scores since 1975, it's been on a steady decline. Since then, our test scores keep getting less. And I think that since this has been happening, because that was around the time it got handed over to the federal government, and when they touch anything, it gets screwed up. But since then, I feel like we're not as innovative as we used to be in a way. And I know there was Vivek Ramaswamy talked about this at one point, about how we need to get back to being more innovative. And I feel like we now are just training students to be more rational and not think outside the box as much and come up with new ideas. And we really need to get back to that, just allowing children to think for themselves, but still being taught how to respect others, because that way we can surpass China in things like in coming up with new inventions. Like AI, if you go, China has this new AI venture they're coming out with. They just opened it, and it's already ahead of most American companies when it comes to AI. So what are we doing wrong, and what do we need to fix?
Right.
So we need to start looking at those things.
Right. But it is interesting. There's the dynamic. The best universities in the world are in the United States.
Right.
That folks from all over the world, when they want to go to the A1, to get an A1 education, they come to the United States for college education. But yet somehow we're failing in elementary, middle, and post and high school level. And so we've got to, but exposing them to the market is really what it means. Is that when we have folks coming out of high school, they need to be employed. And not just employed in a job that's not going to sustain their livelihoods, but a job in which they can have a career. And if that also, and then preparing students to go into our A1 colleges. So if they want a college degree to help them in their career, they can do that as well.
Right. And you were talking about how you want to come to the United States to get a college education. We need to do that way with high school and elementary school. But also what I'm saying is people are coming to the United States, they go to like the Dukes, the Harvards, those schools of the world, okay?
I'm not sure why you might go to Duke. Okay.
I don't know why you want to go to Duke either. But they come over here and then they leave right after they get their education. We need to be trying to keep them to stay here, get their citizenship if they don't have it. So that way they can help the American, us, instead of going out and helping a foreign country. And we saw this with, I think, the reason I was talking about Duke, not because I'm a fan of Duke, but they had somebody came over to Duke, and then they stole this professor's idea for something. I don't remember what it was. And then they went back off. They started the company in another place, and they made billions of dollars.
Yeah.
They're just stealing ideas from the United States.
Right.
So we really need to keep these people in the United States, give them paths to citizenship so that they can just stay here and help us out.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that the history, not history, but the future of what's going to happen with China is going to be the story for the next century. And your generation will have to deal with it more than mine. And I'm 50-50. I mean, I think there is a path that China could go down that would not be good for the world, not be good for the United States. But I also think there is some hope out there that we can be competitors. And that would expose where we are deficient in our own training, our own education system, to compete with them, because there is no reason in the world why we cannot compete with China. Mm-hmm. And with AI, I think this will be one of the immediate challenges of do we regulate AI, do we not regulate AI, and looking over at what China is doing will be a great benefit to us to see what the right thing to do is. They obviously, at this point, have decided not to participate in the world system and are doing things like you're talking about. They have no respect for copyrights. They have no respect for patents. Their military oversteps. And if they continue going down that path, we're going to have a strong country to be able to push back.
Right.
And we need to have well-educated kids, well-educated young adults, a well-trained army to be able to do all of that. But I think in the end, competition is the answer. So if parents see their high schools, if community members see their high schools and their community graduating young adults who cannot compete in this market, we need to be asking what else needs to be done to get us to that point.
In talking about the economy against China, I mean, the beauty of capitalism is, have you ever looked into Milton Friedman?
Sure.
There's this video of him where he talks about a pencil. Yeah. Have you ever seen this?
Yeah, iPencil.
I love that video. And he's just talking about how capitalism works, and just like the graphite could be made by somebody, the eraser is made by somebody else. Yes. People who would never meet, and if they did, they'd probably hate each other, possibly. But they all come together to make this one thing that somebody else is going to buy and use. And that's the beauty of capitalism. You don't have to. It
brings people together.
It brings people together.
Commerce brings people together.
And we need to really bring that back, bringing people together just through the economy to take over, well, not take over, but fight against these other world economies. If we can just join together, maybe if you hate this person, you don't have to associate with them, but you can just work together towards a common goal that, hey, we're the United States. We want to be the best, the strongest economy. We don't want to get overtaken by any other world powers. Right.
And it also demonstrates just the knowledge problem. In that example, there's no one person that knows how to do everything to make a pencil. Mm-hmm. That the knowledge it takes to put that pencil together is spread out among different industries, different individuals, and the market is what brings them together, and it brings all those points. And then of course, once you have the pencil, you got to figure out what's the price to sell it at. Mm-hmm. And there's no way. And the government doesn't have to. The government doesn't make that pencil. The government doesn't set the price. Mm-hmm. And so we need more Republicans at all levels of government to keep the free market going, so that we can implement that.
That's why I'm worried about this new price control that people keep talking about. Like, we need price controls on stuff. Well, when you put these price controls and you tell a company you can't go over this certain amount, it's going to hurt competition. Because, I mean, the real thing that the government should be looking at is probably just keeping their hands off, to be honest. Mm-hmm. But letting these businesses fight amongst each other, who's going to have the lowest prices? It's just competition, simple competition. And if we allow for that competition to happen, the prices are going to go down themselves. You're not going to have to regulate it. Yeah. And that's going to help spur the economy, in which obviously there is some monopoly problems that we have. But, I mean, there's ways to solve these things. Right. And they just need to allow the competition to continue. If you go to Grover Cleveland, his second term, they were in an economic depression throughout it. He kept his hands off. He didn't mess with it. And by the end of his term, they were coming out of the depression. And that was pretty quickly for the kind of depression they were in. But if you go to somewhere like FDR in the Great Depression, which was a little bit more substantial, but still he was a lot more hands-on, I would say. And in a way, I think it probably caused the depression to prolong.
Yeah, I mean, economists now feel like that there would have been a depression, but he's the one who made it a Great Depression by taking some of the actions that he did, the experimentation, the sucking of a lot of the regulations into Washington, and we're still dealing with that today. The New Deal, that really made a regular depression into the Great Depression, and it was World War II that helped us get out of it, not the New Deal.
I mean, regulation, I feel like, just halts an economy. It doesn't stimulate it, and I don't know where these economists who think that using regulations are going to help us. I don't think it really helps us in any way. We need to get back to a more less hands-off or more hands-off government style towards the economy, and we can, on our own mental prowess, beat these other economies. Make more money than them, and we can become stronger than China when it comes to the economy.
But even when it comes to economics, we don't have to beat China. We can, as long as we have a stable world, it's perfectly fine for their economies to grow and ours grow as well. I think we do benefit from being the world leader that sometimes we don't recognize, and we don't need to lose that position. We have the world's reserve currency and things like that we would not want to lose, because we're able to dictate a lot of what happens, I think sometimes even more than we realize. And so I am not saying that we need to lose that position, but just because we prosper, the good thing about free market economics is that we can prosper, and so can fellow countries across the world. Even that could even include China. If China has a growing economy, that's good for a lot of our products that we export over there, and same here. So Mexico we have a lot of trade with Mexico, but if Mexico can get its economy going even a little bit more, some of the corruption and some of the problems that they're having, and the cartels that they're having to deal with, if they were able to fix their economy, that would only help us. I mean, it's not a zero-sum game, that we're all looking at, as our economy grows, their economy grows too.
And interestingly, you were talking about the cartels. I mean, I'm interested to see what's going to happen with that, because Trump is a lot more, obviously in his first term, he was talking about the cartels are bad, but this term, it looks like he actually wants to deal with it a little bit more. I'm interested to see how he's going to go about doing that, if it's either going to be through military force or some type of talking with the Mexican government, which that's not going to do anything. We're talking to their government, because it's all controlled by the cartels anyways. So
if they have a strong American partner who's got their back, they might be able to stand up to the cartels a little bit more. Not that that's going to be an easy thing, not to say that would just cut off the violence immediately, but if America's got their back, they can speak a little bit more loudly.
Right. We just got to show them we support them.
Yeah, correct.
Is there
they haven't had that. They haven't had that at least the last 4 years.
No.
We've been very complacent about the border and our partner down in Mexico, and they have not been able to fight the cartels the way they should be able to fight the cartels. But once again, I agree with you. In and of itself, their government is not strong enough to do it. But with them and us together, there's nothing they can't do to help root out the cartel problem.
Right. And the only issue with that would be a large amount of money we'd have to put into that, just to say, hey, we got your backing. I think Trump would be willing to do that, because that's one of his main issues, is we're going to deal with these cartels. Though I am worried that it could become if we put troops on the ground in Mexico, in the cartels, it becomes like another Middle East situation, just like we had there, where we don't even know who the cartels are. We think we do, and then we just lose a bunch of lives doing that.
Yeah, I agree with that, but I don't think Trump is going to be putting boots on the ground very much. So I don't think that even if that came up as a possibility, Trump would go for that.
Right. I feel like at most, maybe like drone strikes of certain cartel hideouts or places, wherever they do. That would be the most we would see, hopefully, because no one wants to see troops on the ground. So is there anything else you'd like to talk about?
Well, just that on the local level, it's interesting to me that, you see all of this stuff on TV, a lot of the things we've talked about, but we also have a great story to tell as Republicans on the state level. Unfortunately, we didn't win the governor's mansion. We have Josh Stein in there. But still, a lot of what's going on in Raleigh is really implementing a lot of Republican policies there through the legislature, but then through folks like our treasurer, our labor secretary, and our auditor, as we've already talked about. So I think that's just a whole nother level of what's going on in Republican politics, and I just want to make sure that Nash County GOP does its part in keeping those Republican officials in Raleigh, and as we go to 2026 and 2028, that we add to that team in Raleigh as well.
Right. And then just a reminder, go to the Nash GOP Convention, March 20th.
Yes.
Dinner starts at 6 p.m., correct?
Correct.
And then registration's at 5.
Yes,
from 5 to 6.
We'll have a meal, Gardner's Barbecue, and there you can attend without eating for free, but most people come to eat the meal. And so you'll need a ticket, and just go to our Facebook page, Instagram page, and find out, and just send us a message, and we can get tickets to you. The easiest way, if you know somebody who's on the executive committee, if you know me or an officer or an executive committee member, see us about getting a ticket, or just send us a message on Facebook or Instagram.
Right, and you can also email us at nashcountygop@gmail.com.
Correct.
And, DM us on any social media site. We're on all of them, pretty much.
Yep.
So, well, thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having us.